Yeah, and I'm going to ask something. Well, this is hardly frivolous, but I just want to get your opinion on something that's somewhat light-hearted in a way because it's just fun more than anything. So, therefore, Ben Clemens, do you think Albert Pujols will get to 700 home runs?
Ooh. I don't, but I really hope he does.
And that's a perfectly fine answer. Well, why do you say no? I'm not berating you. I just want to know your thinking there. Because I'm like you. I sort of have the pragmatic view of this, but I also have this guy can do anything right now, and they're going to face a lot of crummy teams the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to the fact that he's not going to get enough at-bats. If you look at how often he homers and how often he'd have to play to get it, it's just maybe if he plays every day, but he's kind of bad against righties.
He still is.
He still is, even in this hot streak. I mean, he's gotten it all the way up to basically league average against righties, and that's the best he's been in 5 years against them. I really hope he gets it, and I'm even okay if the Cardinals are kind of clear of the Brewers in the last few weeks. Just say, like, whatever, just play him every day. I don't know. Like, give him his rest, obviously, but let him burn a few percentage points in chasing the record. But they're not – the race isn't over. The Cardinals should be trying to win every day.
Right.
And I think until they're done doing that, that means benching him against righties. And I just think that's going to end up pinching him just short, although I really hope he does it anyway.
Yeah, the Cardinals this season, in fact, I checked on Fangraphs right before the start of the show. You know, the Cardinals going into the weekend, they've had the fourth fewest number of plate appearances against left-handed pitchers this year. And, you know, they have faced right-handers 77% of the time. And that's why I agree with what you're saying, or I agree with what you're thinking, because unless they expand those opportunities, you know, he's just not going to get, well, I would put it this way, the kind of opportunities in terms of the number of opportunities against left-handed pitching that we would all like to see him get to enhance his possibility of getting to 700, which also would enhance the Cardinals' possibility of winning more games because they just pound left-handed pitching.
If you're an opposing team, you didn't need Pujols to be good to not want to pitch lefties against the Cardinals. Like, they have a bunch of really great and really powerful right-handed hitters, and even their switch hitters hit pretty well against lefties. It's not Pujols. It's the fact that you have to face Arenado and Goldschmidt on the wrong side. Oh, man. Like, they're going to be the 1-2 finishers in the MVP, probably.
Yeah.
And they're both righties. Like, of course you don't want to throw lefties against the Cardinals.
Ben, the other question, since I believe we're going to have a September of pursuits, let's go with the easy one first. I mean, Paul Goldschmidt, listen, you never say never, but, or you never say yes, absolutely. That's what I should have said. Sorry about that.
I gotcha.
Is there any way Goldschmidt doesn't win the MVP, you know, barring just really some calamitous, unforeseen circumstance?
Yeah, I mean, the ways that he doesn't win MVP are not super likely, but let's say that he has kind of an okay September, and Arenado just completely goes off and has the best month of his career. I mean, Goldschmidt's offensive numbers are pretty clear, but I think you could make the case that if Goldschmidt's not slumping, but kind of a regular hitter down the stretch, and Arenado has 10 home runs in a month, plays great defense, and the Cardinals win the division because they just managed to hold on at the end of September, and give it to him. He's not, if you look at our formulation of WAR, and I mean, that is definitely not the end-all be-all. They're actually really close, just because it's hard to add that much defensive value as a first baseman, and Arenado is the best defensive third baseman in baseball. That's a pretty big wedge. I still don't think it's likely. I mean, if I'm an MVP voter, I'm going to weight the offensive numbers more, and I'm going to discount WAR somewhat, just because I can look. I can see the home runs. I don't need to wonder if the defensive metric is right. Whereas Arenado just gets a lot of value from that. But short of, I think, a combination of Goldschmidt having a down month and someone just having one of the best months of their career, Francisco Lindor, if he is the best hitter in baseball in September and Goldschmidt has a down month, I don't know, maybe. And maybe the Mets have like a dramatic finale against the Braves where they managed to make it into the playoffs with 3 Lindor home runs in the last series. I don't know. But you have to be thinking of these long shot scenarios because he's just built a huge lead. And I mean, if he wins the Triple Crown, it's over, obviously. But
right.
I think there's a lot of room for him to not win the Triple Crown, and he's way out in the lead right now. I always hesitate to say things are done, like you said. Never say yes, definitely. But yes, definitely.
Yeah, it is amazing too because not only is he, a legitimate candidate to win the Triple Crown. I mean, he's 2 home runs behind Schwarber. He's got Pete Alonso had a good game last night, so the RBI lead is tight. It's like 2 now, I think. And he's got a 13-point lead in batting average over Freeman. So, I mean, he's right there, obviously. But then, you bring WRC Plus into it. You bring, on base percentage, slugging percentage, isolated power. You bring in all these other things, and he leads the National League in those as well. I mean, maybe I'm missing. In fact, you can absolutely fill in the hole in my brain here. This is one of the more dominant seasons that I can remember by a National League player, where it's just almost across the board on top of everything.
Yeah, I mean, it feels kind of like peak Pujols, or not in the same shape, but Barry Bonds when he was at his very best.
Right.
He's just on top of the leaderboard in every different thing. It's been a long time since there's been somebody who is on the offensive side of the ball so across the board excellent. And honestly, he's never been this across the board excellent in his career before. He's going to post a lot of career highs, and in a tough park to hit in a down year for offense. It just doesn't matter.
Hey Ben, I sincerely want your help on something, and because when I make an attempt to evaluate Cardinal performance, right, I really bend over backwards not to be a homer, and I know obviously you're 100% like that, but there's a little bit of bias that seeps in with me because I watch every game, pretty much every inning they play. One thing I've always had since I discovered the whole new world out there about evaluating players, I've always had tremendous respect for, what my friends at Sports Info Solutions do and Fielding Bible as far as defensive runs saved. I mean, I think StatCast is fantastic. But what I see just doesn't mesh with Goldschmidt's ratings defensively. So what am I missing? Outs above average, he's like actually in the negative column last time I looked, and he's about average. He's like right at 0 defensive runs saved, from Fielding Bible. There's a disconnect there for me because he seems to me like he's a hell of a first baseman still.
Yeah, so the main thing I'd say is no one really knows how to evaluate first base defense, and that's a big problem for every defensive system. So much of first base defense does not involve getting to baseballs and converting them into outs. It involves this really tough to figure out, basically, ability to receive and how that affects, the players throwing to you. I tend to heavily discount numbers that are not 0 in terms of first base defensive ability. So a while ago, a lot of the brain trusts that have built a lot of these things, led by Tom Tango, did a study where they looked at kind of year-to-year variation in how first basemen, on the field, off the field, helped their teams convert batted balls into outs. And the real answer is that the best defensive first baseman and the worst defensive first baseman over multi-year spans, we're talking handfuls of outs. It's just not a lot of daylight between the best and worst. But I would not look at the defensive metrics in terms of evaluating one first baseman against another. They try so hard to consider range and how many balls hit to you convert into outs. And it's just really tough. What are you supposed to do with first base? That's not the point of the job.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation. Yeah, and actually what you say is very logical. You're right, because you can't evaluate first baseman the way you do so many other positions. And and I think shifting has actually maybe made that even more difficult because I think some teams are inclined to move the first baseman more towards more towards second base than maybe the Cardinals are. I don't know. So, but anyway, thanks for that. Hey, I want to harken back to your piece, and I talked about it the other day. I even quoted from it in a piece that I wrote at scoopswithdannymac.com about Jordan Montgomery, and the headline caught my attention, and it was something that I'm thinking I probably knew, but it was great for you to actually put it out there and make sense of it. Jordan Montgomery's been the best deadline acquisition in baseball. So people should go there, Fangraphs.com. By the way, the new Fangraphs app is out, and they'll be building on it as they go along. But wherever you get your apps, go get the Fangraphs app and put it on your phone or your tablet or whatever. It's really, really good, and it's going to be great as they continue to build it. So I wanted to put that in there. But anyway, tell us, first of all, you have to be surprised Montgomery's been this good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we even talked about this at the time, and it was like, hey, nice player. Like, I wish they hadn't traded a major league contributor this year to get him, but he'll be one of the Cardinals' probably top 3 starters. I don't think you could have asked every baseball analyst, do you think that Jordan Montgomery is going to pitch to, like, what is it, a 0.35 ERA? Everyone would say no. Like, of course not. You shouldn't expect any pitcher to pitch to that. But I don't know. He's
doubt.
Doing it.
Do you, other than the fact he's throwing his four-seam fastball a lot more than he did with the Yankees this season, and there's a couple other minor things, just like some of his pitch patterns, maybe more change-ups to right-handed hitters even when they're ahead in the count, things like that. But I'll stop rambling and ask you this. He does have, as you pointed out in your piece, he has benefited from really good batted ball luck. So, but what do you think the key has been? It's only been 4 starts, so things can happen. It's not like it's been 25 starts. But what do you think the key has been for him just sort of going to another level since he got here?
Yeah, I think the key has been that I don't know if this is a him thing, if it's a Yachty thing, if it's a Mike Maddox thing, if it's just the Cardinals in general, but they seem to have just told him, like, look, no one's going to hit the ball out of the stadium. It's hilariously large. I know you just came from Yankee Stadium, where if you sneeze, it's a home run, but don't think about that too much. You
Right.
can throw more four-seamers. You don't need to nibble, and it's not like his rates of throwing in each zone have changed that much, but he's just been a lot more willing to. This is one of those stupid baseball analyst things, and I don't know, you'll hear it 100 times, and it's hard to explain it every time, but he's just attacking more. And I think that there's a lot of benefit to being ahead in the count, and then as a result of that, your opponent's taking more defensive swings. It's very interesting to look at production by count, and not just people strike out a lot in 2-strike counts, so overall league lines on 2 strikes are bad. But when you put the ball in play, you do worse. And you do worse in an 0-1 count than a 1-0 count when you put the ball in play. And it's just kind of natural. If you're a hitter, you need to be more defensive when you're behind, and particularly with 2 strikes. I think that a lot of the batted ball luck that Montgomery has benefited from is more just like count luck. And he's done really well at having opponents end the at-bat when he has the upper hand and they're kind of shortening up. I think that the four-seam sinker mix where he's throwing a fastball that basically just moves 6 inches differently is helping a little bit, because when you're already on the defensive and you're trying to pick between 2 fastballs, it's a little tougher. Brandon Woodruff is a good example of a pitcher who throws above his stuff because he has a good ability to mix his fastballs and kind of basically pick the right one more often, but also just keep switching them. And it's a lot easier to get worse contact when you're switching it up just more often, when you have more pitches. It's a really tough thing to tease out in analysis, and I can't prove it to you. But
Right.
I think that he's not this good, but I think that the way that he's pitching, knowing that the defense is good behind him, knowing that the park's big, is going to lead to streaks like this, because the way where you get really awful outcomes is where you're kind of nibbling and you get long bats and you're not really going deep into games. He's going to have cold streaks. I mean, so much of his game depends on what happens when the ball's in play, and batters control a lot of that, right? Like if the other team's
Right.
hitting well, he's not throwing it where they can't hit it. That's not his game. If the other team is just seeing the ball well that day, or just has a hot day, we've seen the Cardinals have days where they have 15 blue hits, and you're like, well, all right, I guess we win. Like that's going to happen to him. That's part of his game. He's going to have ups and downs. But I think the way he's pitching on the Cardinals, and a lot of the Cardinals ground ballers do this, kind of enables these hot streaks better. And that's entirely to the credit of Montgomery and the Cardinals. You know, you got to put yourself in a position to get lucky, and the Cardinals are very good at doing that with their pitchers.
Ben Clemens with us for a couple more minutes if he has it. By the way, I was remiss. I didn't tell you to follow him on Twitter at _Ben_Clemens. And you can get links to all the stuff that he writes and all the comments that he makes kind of spontaneously about baseball. It's a good follow. I did have to ask you about Lars Nootbaar. I mean, this has been really been a lot of fun to watch him, but there's a lot of substance to it, too. I mean, you either take good at bats or you don't. And some of his walk rate stuff is just like laughable because his walk rates have been so high. I mean, it's great, but I just laugh because you see this preposterous number, you know? But what do you think is real about him, and what would be we love him, but let's calm down just a little aspect of him?
Yeah, I mean, I think the walks are real. I think that is the part of his performance that I most believe in. If you look at his entire minor league track record, he's just a good sense of the strike zone. And it's a combination of, you know, that's another platitude that I can tell you. And what does that mean? Well, I don't know. He has a good sense of the strike zone. But in this case, the numbers are just there. He doesn't swing much. And if you swing less, you walk more. That's a one-to-one correlation. It's really easy. But because he makes a lot of contact, he doesn't have just abysmal strikeout rates. He doesn't make infinite contact, but he's not a whiff-prone guy, and he doesn't chase much. It's so much easier to put up decent walk numbers without striking out too much if you just don't chase. It's so simple, and it's so hard. It's a single thing, but it's impossible to do, and so many hitters struggle with it. He has that down. Now, do I think he's going to keep producing on contact like he has? No. I just don't think he's this good of a hitter when he puts the ball in play. I mean, he has looked like, honestly, probably the Cardinals' third best hitter on contact. And Tyler O'Neill's on the team, you know? Like, there's no chance that's going to hold up. There are a lot of Cardinals who I think would probably, over the long run, have better numbers on contact than Nootbaar. He's on a hot streak there, but one thing that I feel really good about as a Cardinals fan is the foundation looks to be pretty high. The floor looks to be pretty high because I understand pitchers might be able to start bullying him in the strike zone a little bit, and that'll happen more because they notice he's just not going to chase. It's really hard to get him to swing over bad pitches. I don't think his bat's really going to force them to change that approach. So I think his production will tail off a little bit as they just really come after him. But there's a limit to how low it can go. He just has such a good sense of when not to swing. And it's dumb, but that just matters a lot.
You know, I was looking at something earlier today, didn't write about it or talk about it yet, but this fits into what you were just talking about. I really like the fact that Marmol against right-handed pitching is using Nootbaar and Donovan 1-2, and it's just so funny to me because they're like twins in a way, not with the power so much because, I think Nootbaar's probably got more, but you look at their the percentage of times that they swing at a pitch. It doesn't have to be a strike, but even with a strike, it's virtually the same. But their swing percentage is identical, and their chase rate is virtually identical. And I just think, I don't know what it is about that cracks me up. But it's like now you got those guys 1-2 in your lineup against right-handers, and I can see them just kind of messing with pitchers' minds with that approach because it's clearly working for them.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think it is really hard for hitters who don't have this as their natural approach to switch to it and make it work because so much of baseball is instinctual when you're hitting that if it's not in your head that you should be hunting for your pitch, and I think a lot of it comes down to that. It's not so much that they're incredible at pitch recognition, but they just know what they're looking for. You can't really teach it, or at least I haven't seen any proof that any team can teach it in a measurable way over time. But it's really a great skill to have, and it's nice to have it on the Cardinals. I feel like they haven't had a ton of that. the last guy who I would think of as really acting like that on the Cardinals was Tommy Pham. And he was a very satisfying player to watch hit because, I mean, he was hunting for his pitch, and, you know, you'd just see him take 5 straight pitches, and it's 3-2. And then you'd feel good about it because you knew if any of those pitches were in his zone, he was going to just try to unload. I really enjoy watching that style of at-bat where it feels like cat and mouse and it feels like the hitter has an idea of what's going on. Again, like, I don't think they can teach it to guys, but I think they're doing a good job of finding a way to make those skill sets pop, and more credit to the Cardinals for that.
One more for you, man. I'm sorry to keep you long, but I enjoy our conversations, and I don't want to leave something that I was thinking about all week to ask you. I don't want to leave that unasked. So I'm just going to say his name, Corey Dickerson. Take it away.
I think, to quote the late and great Denny Green, he was what he thought we were. Or I'm paraphrase. It was a bad paraphrase. But, you know.
He is who we thought he was, yeah.
He is who he thought he was. There's no letting him off the hook. That part didn't have to happen. But if I told you coming into the season that Corey Dickerson was going to be an above-average hitter for the year, and he'd do it because he never really struck out, he didn't walk that much, but he hit for a little bit of power, and he got on base just by virtue of never striking out, you'd say, yeah, that's what Corey Dickerson has done his entire career. You'd say, oh, is he kind of a liability in the outfield, and can he only play against righties? And I'd tell you, yeah, those are both true. And that's what he's done. We got this weird path where he was just awful to start the year and kind of was playing for his job, it felt like, for a while. And then he got hurt and took a while to come back from that. I do think that the long layoff is the wrong way to put it, but the abbreviated run-up to the start of the season had some strange effects on veterans. And there were a lot of veterans who were just nowhere near their established performance level in April and May this year. We need to see if I can quantify that. I don't exactly know the way to do it, but I remember, you know, you and I talked about the Dickerson signing this offseason, and I think we were both kind of down on it, but we both thought, oh yeah, he'll be like an above-average hitter as a platoon DH with Pujols. Maybe we'd rather have Nolan Gorman do that or have Lars Nootbaar do that, but that's kind of what he'll be. He's been that. The way he's gotten there is strange, but I don't actually think he's turned over a new leaf and he's suddenly a great hitter. I think he's on a hot streak, and like I said, the way he plays, where he never strikes out and never walks, when his balls in play are falling, he's going to look great. And yeah, he had 10 straight hits. So that's
no doubt about it. That is what it is. I mean,
he's
yeah, it's been fun to watch. It really has. They seem to have a deeper team. Maybe this is just me overreacting to some individual performances, but we remember when Marmol was appointed manager, and without giving a lot of details, you know, he would mention matchups. And I think we all, those of us who pay attention to this stuff maybe a little more closely, we all assume that, you know, he's talking about kind of what Gabe Kapler did, the Giants did, a lot more emphasis on platoon split advantages, things like that. They needed to have more options to make that work, but they seemingly do have more options now, in terms of just being able to put those matchups together. A lot of that had to do with, Donovan's kind of this pretty much a pleasant surprise. But, the way now
rebounding, Donovan being great and DeYoung rebounding, I think has really made it easier on the Cardinals.
Yeah, and also to see Dickerson, doing to what you were saying, he's doing really what we thought he would do all along. It's just that he was so bad in the beginning, we kind of mentally erased him or something, So, yeah, I mean, but they have a lot of good chance. They have more choices now, though. It's pretty good. Listen, I've kept you too long. I appreciate it very, very much, and always great to talk. Great talk Cardinal baseball with you. I look forward to it every time. So thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Love talking to you. You too, buddy. Have a good one.
It's my friend Ben Clemens from Fangraphs, who's outstanding. You got two nerds, so I hope you like the nerd talk when it comes to baseball, getting into some of the deeper numbers. And he's got one online now about why don't the soft aligners get respect. And he's talking about guys that just kind of a nice, easy stroke. It's almost like Corey Dickerson, nice, easy stroke, not blasting the ball with tremendous exit velocity, but just kind of, it's almost like hitting a golf shot or something, and I know what he's talking about. He uses a lot of metrics and all that, and so to some of you, that would not be an entertaining read, and some of that is true about what I write and talk about. But sometimes you have to really dig into it to explain it. But I like the fact that he appreciates what he calls the soft liners, as in soft line drives. Because Jim Hewer, that's another thing, even though I am an advanced metrics guy, but that's another thing about the way the game has changed that I don't really appreciate as much as a lot of things, which is exit velocity, exit velocity, exit velocity. Well, listen, if a guy can give you a little Rod Carew, little Tony Gwynn action, I mean, I don't really give a damn what his exit velocity is. I think a lot of that applies to guys that you associate with extra base power, home run power. But I don't want to lose these guys that just know they just have a good stroke and they're calm, and it's a nice level, even stroke. They're not over swinging, they're not overreaching, and they'll hit that beautiful soft line drive into a gap. I mean, Dickerson does that. It's a really wonderful thing to watch. I'd hate to see guys like that sort of be downgraded to the point where there's going to be fewer and fewer of them as time goes on. I don't understand that.
Yeah, the exit velocity thing for me, Bernie, is overrated. It's like, okay, yeah, he hit it hard. For instance, it was earlier this week, the kid O'Neal Cruz had apparently the hardest exit velocity ever recorded, and I was
in Statcast there, it's 2015.
And I was like, well, that was a single. Good for him. It's a single. It's the same as anybody else. It's not like he crushed one and it went out of the ball. I was like, it's a single.
Well, he hit it off the wall, though.
Was it? I thought it was a single I saw. Okay.
No, it was a single because he hit it so hard. He hit it so hard, it just went zooming into the wall, and the right fielder played it off the wall. It was one of those things you see sometimes at Fenway Park or whatever. Oh, he killed it. And if he had elevated it just a bit, it's an easy home run.
Gotcha. So there are just times I'm like, yeah, okay. I just think it's overvalued sometimes. I like guys that hit the ball hard, but to your point, you give me a bloop double down the left field line that clears the bases, it works just as good for me.
Yeah, I like those things. I think exit velocity is very helpful in understanding a lot of things too. Because the harder you hit it, the higher your batting average will be if you consistently hit the ball hard. So there's a lot of value there. But I'm talking about not so much the exit velocity to the point of like it doesn't mean much, because it actually means quite a bit. But to the point of excluding hitters or downgrading hitters that are never going to be StatCast stars, but yet they know how to put the ball in play. Mm-hmm. They know how to hit to the opposite field. They know how to stay within themselves. I'm just saying there's got to be room for guys like that, because if it isn't, then they're all one-dimensional hitters. I just like guys who have that finesse skill when they're at the plate.
Gotcha. Yeah. No.
If you had a whole team of those guys, you wouldn't be very good. But they actually are really terrific complements to the high velocity guys, because these pitchers are all dialed up with these high velocity guys that go against them, and then you have a Corey Dickerson coming up and just like poop, pops a little one to left field, hits one down the line. He hits a lot of balls right down the line.
He does.
They're not rocketed. He just knows how to put the ball in play, and he's got a good stroke. So. I just don't like anything that becomes, well, that's the only way you evaluate hitters. I hate that. No, there's all kinds of ways to evaluate hitters. Like if a guy has got a great exit velocity, okay, which should lead to great things. But what if he doesn't make contact very well? So when he hits it damn hard. But what if he just doesn't put it in play very often because he's swinging and missing all the time, you can take the exit velocity and throw it out in the dumpster as far as I'm concerned.
Good point.
Right?
Yep.
That that's the
I see
that's
what
how
you're
I
saying.
differentiate that stuff,
Gotcha.
you know?
Yep.
Yeah, you know what I mean?